most profitable way is the pretty house business. I call it the modern day money machine because that's exactly what it is. It just churns and churns and churns money. So the fastest way to get a large check without using your money or credit is a down payment or deposit on a nice home. Now notice I said a large check. Okay, wholesaling houses is pretty fast. Pretty tough to get a large check though. I will get more money from the down payment or the deposit on a pretty home in a pretty neighborhood within a few days after buying a house than you will probably get rehabbing a house and taking months to get it to the end. Plus, I will keep getting paid. You will not if you're rehabbing a house. Key is the terms business. 5-letter word. No terms, no deal. So right now, before we go any further, I should tell you that the majority of people that sells a house today want all cash and full price. So we're not dealing with the majority. We're dealing with a very small minority. That's okay. Just how many houses do you think you want to buy in a month? Anyway, 1 or 2? It's a very small minority. So like any other business, regardless of what product or service it sells, we have to deal with the many to get to the few. And I don't care what you sell. That's always been the case in every business that I've ever been exposed to. So we need a system to screen them out quickly so we can get down to the people who are predisposed to do business with us. There's 3 kinds of terms and only 3. Number 1, you can lease it with an option to buy, which gives you the right to sublease it to someone else with an option to buy. You control the house, but you don't own the house. You have the right to buy it, but you have not bought it yet. Or you can buy it with owner financing, which means the owner, your attorney will create a note and deed of trust or mortgage, depending on what state you're in, that says that your entity that you're buying it in owes the seller X amount of money. So the seller becomes the bank. Now, most of the time, all we're doing is making the seller's payment for them to their bank. But in fact, there is still a debt we owe the seller. And sometimes, many times, it's the same amount they owe the bank. And even when it's not, even when I owe the seller more than they owe the bank, they're going to wait to get their equity until we cash them out sometime in the future if I buy with owner financing. Most of the properties that I buy, most of the properties that my thousands of students buy all across America are bought with owner financing of some sort. Not going to get into 3 different types of owner financing today. Doesn't matter because you're never going to prepare the documents anyway, because all these deals are closed with an attorney who prepares most of the documents. All you have is a simple contract to get it in writing so the attorney knows how to prepare the rest of the documents. And the last one is get the deed subject to, which is never a word that will come out of your mouth when you're talking to a seller, but it's a national phenomenon. A lot of people are out buying properties subject to, which simply means the seller signs the deed and signs the closing statement, walks away, got no money coming, and the buyer starts making payments on their loan. The buyer is buying the property subject to the underlying debt, not assuming the underlying debt, not applying for qualifying at the bank. We don't do that. If you're going to do that, that's the same as the originating one. You personally guarantee the debt, they'll show in your credit report. That's a no-no. All 3 of these mean that the loan stays in the seller's name until we pay them off in the future. Seller must agree to that, and you'll be surprised how many of them could care less. So before you go making assumptions, so who's going to do that? Let's deal with this right now. We got to get rid of this word why, because you don't need to understand why. It's not your job to think for the seller, make decisions for the seller, because you can't, you're not qualified. Because you see, we don't make offers to sellers, they make offers to us. We ask questions, they answer our questions. So if I'm lease purchasing the property, I'm just leasing with an option to buy. I mean, the deed stays in the seller's name, that's not an issue anyway. But if I'm buying with owner financing, you might think, well, everybody wants their loan paid off. Well, that's not true. Or when they're just deeding to be subject to, and no, I don't owe them any more money, same thing. Just going to think they'd want their loan paid off. I don't understand why. Quit asking why. Because if you have to have the answer to why every time you make a move, you're never going to accomplish anything. It doesn't matter why. If I'm not guaranteeing debt, I'm not making promises that I can't keep. Everything is disclosed in writing and closed with an attorney. Ask what, how, and when. Here's the reasons you're doing business right here. Number 1, monthly cash flow. That's the difference between the rent we collect and the payment we make, and sometimes that can be substantial. In fact, sometimes over $1,000 a month on one house. Debt pay down. This is one that investors tend to forget. Every month that you make a payment, your debt goes down on your underlying loan that you did not guarantee. Don't forget. I call it your debt. It's not your debt. It's debt that you are making payments on, but you have not personally guaranteed the loan. Does not show in your credit report, does not show in your financial statement. It's called non-recourse debt. Just the same, I want that non-recourse debt to go down every month. Now, when I put a lease option tenant buyer in a house, they owe me the same amount 5 years from now as they owe me today because they don't get rent credit, so their debt does not go down. So every month, my equity gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And next thing you look back and holy moly, that thing is paid way down. I'll show you an example of that on a house I own here in a minute. And appreciation. Wow, look what's happened to appreciation lately. People are getting rich in real estate just because they own it. And it's gone up in value tremendously. Well, here's a shocker. In my entire 75 years on this earth, real estate has always gone up, and it will continue to go up. It bounces around a little bit. 2008 made it take a dip. It came back, took a few years, came back with a vengeance. Now it's not worth more. Prices are always going to go up. Appreciation is something you can always count on in real estate, even if it takes a dip from time to time. So that is what makes people very wealthy, actually. That and the debt pay down, I call the cash flow a bonus. But appreciation and debt pay down is the big reasons why you're going to own real estate. Depreciation. Depreciation means that the government will pay you to own real estate. Because when you own a piece of property, you get to write off a proportion of that value as depreciation. And that means that you have a tax deduction on your tax returns. That if you're in a 25% bracket and you got a $20,000 depreciation write-off, that's $5,000 you're not sending the IRS this year. Not a tax write-off, that's tax savings. Depreciation causes tax savings. So the more depreciation you have, the more property you own with non-recourse debt, the more of that gift from the IRS you get called depreciation. And also, most of the people that I put in houses on a rent-to-own never buy. They wind up moving. And when they wind up moving, they forfeit their non-refundable deposit. When they forfeit it, what do I got to do? I got to go out and put another person in there and collect a big old deposit again. And then the equity payoff. When I buy a house, I'm going to get some kind of equity in it. In the terms business, it's not about buying them cheap. It's about getting the terms. But even then, I want it below absolute retail price. I'm just not going to pay absolute top retail price, not even with terms. I mean, I want some kind of a discount, I don't know, at least 10% or so. I just sleep better when I get that. So I get that right up front. And then here's another bonus that you don't see there. When I put a lease option tenant buyer in a house, I raise the price. I always raise the price, always have, long before the hot market. I've raised that price as much as 10%. And the buyer will happily pay it because they're not interested in the price. They're interested in the terms. How fast can they get in, how much down, how much per month. So I've always raised the price. So I add more to the price than the market value says it's worth. So I build my own equity in. Even if I were to buy it for 100% of its value and I sell it for 110% on a lease purchase, I created my own equity.